When my mother said she's never helped us, not once, I felt something in my chest go very still. Not broken. Still. The kind of stillness that comes right before a storm moves through a field and flattens everything in one direction. We were at my cousin Rachel's engagement party. 200 people, string lights across the rented barn, long wooden tables, open bar. A slideshow of childhood photos playing on a white screen near the dance floor. I almost didn't come. I had a client presentation Monday morning in Boston. Flying back Sunday night meant landing close to midnight and going straight into prep mode, but my mother had said family matters, we don't see you enough. So I came. I wore a navy dress. Simple. Nothing dramatic. Daniel arrived 30 minutes after me. He always times his entrances. My younger brother. Charismatic, loud in the way that makes people lean in instead of pull away. He hugged everyone twice. Carried a bottle of champagne like it was a trophy. Look who finally made it out of corporate prison, he joked when he saw me. People laughed. I smiled. That's our rhythm. By the time dinner ended, the wine had softened everyone's edges. My uncle handed my mother the microphone to say a few words about Rachel. She cried on cue. She praised love. She praised family. And then, like it was a side note, she said, family is about showing up for each other. Daniel has always shown up for us. In every way. Some children just have that heart. Others, she sighed lightly, well, others are too busy building their own lives to remember who sacrificed for them. There were a few polite laughs. Someone murmured, "Oh, Linda." But she wasn't joking. She looked directly at me. And Claire has never supported us. Not financially. Not when things were hard, but that's her choice. The microphone amplified every word. Not financially. Not when things were hard. I heard my name echo against wooden beams. People didn't turn fully, but they shifted. The subtle body language of recalculation. I felt my face heat, but I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I didn't defend. I just watched the slideshow continue behind her. Baby photos, graduations, Christmas mornings. There was one picture of me at 16 holding an academic award. My father standing next to me, stiff and proud. I remembered that night. He'd said, "You won't need anyone. You're built different." At the time it felt like praise. Later, I understood it was exemption. 5 years earlier, my father had called me on a Tuesday afternoon. He never calls during business hours. "Can you talk?" he asked. His voice was off, thinner somehow. I stepped into a conference room and shut the glass door. "What's going on?" He hesitated long enough for my stomach to tighten. "We might lose the house." The words landed without drama, just flat. "What do you mean lose it?" "There's been some restructuring, a bad investment, the market turned, we're behind." "How behind?" 4 months. I sat down slowly. "That's not behind, Dad." He exhaled. "There's a foreclosure notice." I stared at the table. The same house, the one with the oak tree out front, the kitchen island my mom had insisted on, the backyard where Daniel built a treehouse that collapsed in the first storm. "Does Daniel know?" I asked. Silence. "We didn't want to worry him," my mother's voice floated in the background. "He's got the twins. And the new office lease." "Of course. How much do you need?" I asked quietly. $68,000 to catch up, plus penalties. I calculated automatically. My savings account, my brokerage. The emergency fund I'd built meticulously since I was 23. I had it, barely. "Send me the documents," I said. That night I stayed up until 2, reviewing everything. Adjustable rate mortgage. Refinance from Daniel's wedding year. A home equity line used to bridge his first business venture. A second refinance when that venture failed. Bridge. That word again. My family has always treated money like a temporary plank between two cliffs. No one ever checks what's underneath. I wired $72,486 the next morning. I told him it was a loan. My father said, "We'll pay you back in a year." I said, "Okay." I knew it wasn't true. It didn't stop there. The next year, property taxes increased unexpectedly. I sent $9,800. When my dad needed surgery and insurance denied part of it, I covered $21,300. When my mother's car transmission failed, I transferred $4,200 without comment. It became a rhythm, not monthly, not predictable. Just whenever things tilted too far. I never told Daniel. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't want to compete. He visited every Sunday, brought groceries sometimes, fixed light fixtures, posted photos with captions like "taking care of the real MVPs." People saw him. They didn't see wire confirmations, and I didn't correct them, because correcting it would make it feel transactional. I wanted it to feel like love. Back at the engagement party, my mother handed the microphone back to my uncle. Applause resumed. Music restarted. Daniel squeezed my shoulder as he passed. "Don't take it personally," he murmured. "She's emotional. Not financially, not when things were hard." The sentence replayed in my head with surgical precision. I walked outside to the parking lot and sat in my rental car. For a few minutes, I just breathed. I could let it go. I could be the bigger person, the quiet one, the independent one. Or I could correct the record. I opened my phone, scrolled to my banking app. 5 years of transfers, dates, amounts, confirmation numbers. I had never deleted them. Not intentionally, just habit. Like keeping receipts in a drawer you never expect to open. I stared at the screen. Something inside me shifted. Not anger. Clarity. I got out of the car. The slideshow was still playing when I walked back inside. A projector sat on a small folding table near the DJ booth. It was connected to a laptop running the photo loop. I walked up to the DJ. "Can I borrow this for 5 minutes?" I asked. He looked confused. "For what?" "To show something." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Okay." I unplugged the HDMI cable and connected my own laptop. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The screen flickered. The music softened as people noticed movement. My mother frowned slightly. "Claire?" she said into the mic again. "What are you doing?" I turned toward her. "I just want to clarify something," I said calmly. The room stilled in that subtle way large rooms do when tension enters quietly. I opened a folder. Bank transfers. The first PDF filled the screen. Date, amount. Recipient, my father. $72,346. For the foreclosure notice, I said. No emotion. Just data. The room went completely silent. The room didn't erupt. No one gasped loudly. No one dropped a glass. It was quieter than that. A thick, uncomfortable stillness. The kind where people are waiting for someone else to laugh first so they can decide how to feel. My father stood up slowly. "Claire," he said, not into the microphone, just to me. "This isn't the place." "It became the place," I replied evenly. I clicked to the next document. $9,800. Property taxes. Next. $21,300 balance. Surgical balance. Next. $4,200. Car repair. I didn't list every transfer. I listed enough. At the bottom of the spreadsheet was a summary I had never intended to show anyone. Total over 5 years, $238,904. The number sat there in black text against a white background. Not dramatic, not bulldozed, just factual. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she lowered the microphone. "That's private," she whispered. "So was your accusation," I said. Daniel stepped closer to the screen as if proximity might make it less real. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I know," I answered. Someone near the bar muttered, "Oh my God." Another voice, "Is that real?" I rotated the laptop slightly so the bank logos were visible. Dates. Reference numbers. It wasn't theatrical. It was administrative. "I never asked for recognition," I continued, "but I won't accept being rewritten." My father's face looked different. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Smaller. "You chose to send that," he said finally. "Yes?" "We didn't force you." "No. Then why make it public?" I paused before answering. "Because you made absence public." The sentence landed heavier than the numbers. My mother sat down slowly. The DJ looked like he wanted to disappear into his equipment. Daniel rubbed his forehead. The slideshow thumbnails of Rachel's childhood photos were still faintly visible behind my spreadsheet window. It felt surreal, like 2 timelines overlapping, celebration and correction. "I never said you didn't help at all," my mother tried again weakly. "You said never," I replied. A few people shifted uncomfortably. My Aunt Linda stepped forward. "Maybe we should." "No," I said gently. "Let's not rush past it." For years, things had been rushed past. Comments disguised as jokes, comparisons framed as praise. Daniel needs more guidance. Claire doesn't need. I had absorbed those lines like background noise, until they solidified into narrative. My father finally exhaled deeply. "I didn't want people knowing we needed money," he admitted. The honesty was thin but real. "I didn't want people thinking we couldn't provide for ourselves." "And the solution," I said carefully, "was pretending I never provided?" He didn't answer. Because there wasn't a version of that sentence that didn't expose pride. Daniel turned toward me fully. "Why didn't you tell me it was this much?" he asked. "I didn't want it to be a competition." That's not fair, he said. No, I agreed. It isn't. The irony sat between us. For years I had been labeled the independent one, the strong one, the one who didn't need help. Strength had become a reason to exclude me from sympathy. Now that same strength was being reframed as aggression. You humiliated us, my mother said again, quieter now. I corrected you, I replied. The distinction mattered to me. Maybe not to them, but to me. Rachel's fiancé finally approached gently and said, maybe we should wrap up speeches. Practical, neutral. The music came back on, softer this time. People dispersed in careful clusters, conversations resumed but differently. Quieter, measured, aware. No one congratulated me, no one confronted me. But the recalibration was visible. I unplugged my laptop, closed it, walked toward the side door. Daniel followed me outside. The evening air was cooler now. You blindsided them, he said. They blindsided me. He ran a hand through his hair. I genuinely thought I was the one helping the most. I know, you let me think that. Yes. Why? Because if I had told you, I would have become the difficult sister, the one keeping score, the one making money transactional. Instead, I said, because I thought truth would surface on its own. He looked back through the barn window at our parents. They looked shaken. They should be, I said. Not cruelly. Just honestly. The drive back to my hotel was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I replayed the moment in my head. Not the projection itself, but the expression on my father's face when he realized people knew. He hadn't been angry first. He'd been exposed. And exposure is different from embarrassment. Embarrassment is social. Exposure is structural. The story they had told about themselves, self-sufficient, supported mainly by their son, had cracked. And I had been the one holding the hammer. That thought unsettled me more than I expected. The next morning my phone rang at 7:12 a.m. My father. I let it ring twice before answering. Can we talk? He asked. I drove to their house. The oak tree still stood in the front yard. The house looked the same, stable, normal. Inside it felt smaller. My mother was at the kitchen table, red-eyed. Daniel was already there. Of course he was. He always arrives first. No one spoke for a moment. Then my father said, You didn't have to do that. I didn't have to say anything either, I replied. But you did. He flinched slightly. I was emotional, my mother said. It was a party. You've said versions of that sentence before, I answered gently. Just not with a microphone. Silence. Daniel looked at the table. I should have known, he said quietly. The refinance didn't make sense. You were busy. My mother said quickly. He shook his head. No, I just didn't look closely. That was new. Ownership. My father leaned back in his chair. I didn't want to feel like I owed my daughter, he admitted finally. The sentence hung heavy. I never wanted you to feel that way, I said. But I did, he replied. Every time you transferred money, I felt smaller. That wasn't something I had anticipated. I thought pride was external, about what others saw. I hadn't considered that my help disrupted his internal hierarchy. Parent, provider, authority. My support inverted something fundamental. So the solution, I said slowly, was to minimize it? He didn't deny it. He just closed his eyes briefly. I told myself it was temporary, he said, that I'd pay you back quickly. It's been 5 years. I know. My mother's voice was softer now. We always said you didn't need us, that you were capable. That wasn't a compliment, I replied. She looked confused. It felt like one. It felt like dismissal, I said. The word landed differently than numbers had. Dismissal. That was the real wound. Not the money, not the speech, the assumption that because I functioned well I required nothing. Daniel spoke again. You should have told me, he said to our parents. We didn't want to burden you, my mother insisted. You burdened her instead, he said quietly. Another silence, longer this time, less defensive, more honest. I'm not asking for repayment, I said finally. All three of them looked up. I'm asking for one thing. What? My father asked. No more rewriting. My mother's brow furrowed. No more implying I wasn't there. No more praising one child by erasing the other. That wasn't our intention, she said automatically. I know, I replied, but it was the effect. My father nodded slowly. We'll fix it. How? I asked. He hesitated. We'll tell the truth. When? He looked at my mother. And she looked back at him. Soon, she said. Not vaguely, I answered. Specifically. Because vague promises had filled this house for years. My father cleared his throat. Sunday. Church luncheon. It wasn't a grand stage, but it was public, and that mattered. I nodded once. Okay. When I left their house, I didn't feel victorious, I felt tired. Correction isn't satisfying the way revenge is portrayed in movies. It's heavy. It rearranges furniture inside relationships. Some pieces don't fit the same afterward. In the following days, relatives called. Carefully. Is everything okay? You didn't have to embarrass them. I had no idea. The reactions split almost evenly. Some supported me privately, some defended my parents. Most avoided taking a clear side. Narratives don't collapse cleanly, they fray. Sunday came. I didn't attend the luncheon. That was intentional. If they were going to correct the story, it couldn't be prompted by my presence. Daniel went. He texted me afterward. She said it. What exactly? I replied. She told everyone you covered the foreclosure, and more. And? Dad confirmed it. I stared at the message longer than I expected. How did it go? Quiet, he wrote, but honest. Honest, that word again. Small, stabilizing. For the first time in years, I felt like the ledger wasn't tilted. Not financially, narratively. $72,486. For the foreclosure notice, I repeated. No tremor, no raised voice. Just a fact. A few people leaned forward instinctively, as if they hadn't heard correctly. My father's face drained of color first. My mother's followed a second later. Daniel let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Claire? He said under his breath. What are you doing? I didn't look at him. I clicked to the next document. $9,800. Property tax increase. The following year. Click. $21,300. Dad's surgery when insurance denied coverage. Click. $4,200. Mom's car transmission. Each page clean. Official, time-stamped, not dramatic screenshots, just structured records, 5 years, 18 transfers. The final slide was a summary I had pulled together quickly before walking back in. Total, $187,936. I turned toward the room. You said I've never supported you. Not financially. Not when things were hard. I looked at my mother directly. I didn't realize we were rewriting history tonight. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." My uncle shifted in his seat. Daniel stepped closer to me, not aggressively, but close enough to signal alignment with our parents. "This isn't the place," he said quietly. I nodded once. "You're right, it wasn't." A small ripple moved through the crowd. The kind that happens when people collectively understand that something irreversible has just occurred. My mother found her voice first. "We never asked you to parade private matters in public," she said sharply. "You didn't hesitate to parade me," I replied. Her mouth opened. Closed. My father still hadn't spoken. And that, more than anything, confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was convenience. Daniel finally turned to the guests. "There are nuances here," he said smoothly. "Claire makes more money than all of us combined. She wanted to help." I looked at him then. "I wanted the house not to be foreclosed on," I said. "That's not the same thing." He inhaled slowly. "You could have said something earlier." "When?" I asked calmly. "When people praised you for taking care of everything? When Mom told church friends you were covering bills? When Dad said at Thanksgiving that he was proud his son stepped up?" Silence. Daniel's jaw tightened. "I never claimed." "You didn't correct it," I said. And that was the truth that landed. Because he hadn't. Not once. Not in 5 years. He didn't lie outright, he just let the narrative bloom around him. And I let it. Because I didn't want to compete for love. A laptop. The slideshow screen went black. "I'm not asking for applause," I said to the room. "I'm asking not to be publicly diminished for something I quietly carried." I turned to my parents. "You told me you'd pay me back in a year." My father swallowed. "We meant to. It's been 5. The barn felt smaller now, more intimate, less celebratory. Rachel looked stricken, clutching her fiancé's hand. I met her eyes and gave a small apologetic nod. "I didn't plan this tonight," I said softly, "but I won't absorb that sentence, not anymore." I placed the HDMI cable back on the DJ's table. "Congratulations, Rachel," I added gently. And I walked out. The drive to the airport felt longer than the flight. I replayed everything. Not with regret, but with clarity. There's a specific fatigue that comes from being the capable one, the independent one, the one who doesn't need help. It's flattering when you're young, it becomes isolating when you're older. Because capability becomes exemption. You don't need reassurance, you don't need support, you don't need acknowledgement. And eventually, in their eyes, you don't need fairness either. Daniel called the next morning. Of course he did. You embarrassed them, he said, without greeting. I corrected them. You blindsided everyone. So did Mom. That was different. How? Silence. You're making this transactional, he said finally. I laughed once, not unkindly. It became transactional when I wired 6 figures, he exhaled hard. You know how they are. Yes, I said. I do. That was the problem, I did know. And I had been compensating for it my entire adult life. 3 days later, my father called. Alone. I should have stopped her, he said. I waited. I didn't think she'd say that. But when she did, he didn't answer immediately. I didn't want to escalate. There it was. Peacekeeping over truth. I wasn't asking you to escalate, I said quietly. I was asking you not to let me be erased. He cleared his throat. We're grateful. I know you are, I said, privately. He flinched at that. I don't need public praise, I continued, but I won't accept public dismissal. He was silent for a long time. Finally he said, What do you want? It wasn't defensive. It was genuine. I want the loan formalized, I said. Another pause. It was never a gift. He understood immediately what that meant. Structure, documentation, acknowledgement, not emotional repayment. Real repayment. I'll talk to your mother, he said. I'd prefer you talk to a lawyer. That conversation changed everything. Not because they suddenly had the money, they didn't. But because something shifted in the power dynamic. When the paperwork arrived 2 weeks later, promissory note, repayment schedule tied to eventual home sale, it wasn't about the dollars. It was about recognition. For the first time, my support wasn't invisible. It was documented. Daniel stopped calling as often. The Sunday photos continued, but the captions changed slightly. Family time instead of taking care of my people. Small edits, but noticeable. My mother didn't mention the party again. Not once. At Christmas, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a check. $2,000. First payment, she said stiffly. It wasn't about the amount. It was about the line drawn in ink. 6 months later, the house sold. The market had recovered. They downsized to a townhouse 20 minutes away. When the closing statement came through, my father wired the remaining balance. Full repayment. With interest. The transfer notification appeared on my phone during a client meeting. I didn't react outwardly. But something inside me unclenched. Not because I needed the money, but because I was no longer the silent bridge between cliffs. At the next family gathering, smaller this time, just immediate relatives, my mother raised a toast. To my children, she said. Plural. Daniel smiled. I met her eyes across the table. She held them for a second longer than usual. It wasn't an apology, but it was awareness. And sometimes that's the closest certain people get. I used to think love meant absorbing what others couldn't carry. Now I understand something different. Love without boundaries becomes subsidy. Support without acknowledgement becomes expectation. And silence, if maintained long enough, becomes your identity. That night in the barn, I didn't destroy my family. I corrected a narrative. And in doing so, I stopped being the invisible one. Not because they finally saw me, but because I stopped agreeing to disappear.